All right, everybody, it is draft time. It's time to dive into the upcoming 2022 draft. So, hope you guys are ready. We've got a lot of ground to cover because we actually have a lot of draft ammo this year. We've got a lot of picks, we've got a lot of stuff to work with here, and we've got a lot of needs to fill. So, we're going to go position by position, starting at quarterback because obviously, with the recent activities of this team, we find ourselves in need of a long-term solution at quarterback. So today we're going to go over the quarterbacks who are going to require a top 100 pick. So basically the first 3 rounds. And then tomorrow we're going to talk about some guys who are going to be day 3 picks if they're drafted at all, the more sleepers. But there's a very high probability, in my opinion, that one of the 6 guys we're going to talk about today ends up being a Seattle Seahawk in 2022 and is the heir apparent to Russell Wilson. So, we're going to start with the guy that has become the more or less consensus number 1 quarterback in this draft. And we're going to go through from there, and we're going to talk about what they are as a player a little bit. Now, I'll tell you all straight up, there are a lot of people on YouTube who will go way more in-depth on these players than I can. I'm trying to cover a lot of ground here. I'm trying to cover hundreds of different prospects. So if you want to go on a deep, deep, deep dive on some of these players, you're going to have to find somebody else. I'm trying to be a little more, I'm trying to use brevity here. Trying to give you a quick summary of what these players are, what I see from them, from what I've seen, from what I've heard. There are going to be guys out there who will make videos that are hours long analyzing every last play that Malik Willis has ever made in college football. Same for guys like Kenny Pickett, Desmond Ridder, Matt Corral, or any player in this draft. So just understand that this is just trying to give a general idea of each player. So with that in mind, let's start with Malik Willis. Now, first of all, Malik Willis is a guy who, if you want, you will probably need to spend the number 9 overall pick on at this point. And you will honestly be lucky if he's still there because there are quite a few teams in front of the number 9 pick that may take him. The Lions, the Falcons, the Giants, and the Panthers all strike me as realistic candidates for a Malik Willis landing place. All right, so with that in mind, let's take a look at him. Basically, when you look at Malik Willis, I think the best case scenario, the guy that you're going to be reminded of is Deshaun Watson. Now, in no universe is this guy as good a prospect as Deshaun Watson overall. He played at a very small school. He played at Liberty. And his production, while good, was not anything that would make anybody go, oh, this is a slam dunk, forget about it, blue chipper. Not at all. But when you watch Malik Willis play, he will make you think a little bit of Deshaun Watson. He's 6'1", 215 pounds, not great size. His hand size is good, however. It's kind of like the Wilson thing. He doesn't have the Wilson hands, but his hands are not small. Last time he ran a 40 time, it was 4.37, but he didn't run at the combine, so we don't know what it is now. And you look at his numbers over the 2 years that he was the starter at Liberty. His completion percentage was mediocre, but his yards per attempt were quite strong, 5.5 yards per. He became a little more turnover prone in 2021 compared to 2020. He doubled his number of interceptions despite not having a massive increase in overall production. And that's going to be a little bit of a concern for somebody like a Pete Carroll, who we know values keeping the ball over anything else. He was a prolific runner over those first 2 years, or, well, the only 2 years he was a full-time starter in college football. Became less efficient at it in 2021, but he still ran for almost 900 yards in 2021, almost 950 yards in 2020, still ran for over a touchdown a game, and there's a lot of talent here. And if you take a look at the positions on the big board, you can see that pretty much everybody who's reputable at this point has Malik Willis going in the first round. Draft Network 27, ESPN 21, Tankathon says 9th overall, actually, which is where we are. And the thing is, because this is, I'll just say it, a bad draft class for quarterbacks, Malik Willis, who would probably normally be a late first round pick like a Lamar Jackson was, is probably going to be a top 10 pick. So you are on some level over drafting Malik Willis. However, if you believe he is the guy, if you believe in him, then you're not really overdrafting him because having the quarterback is such a big deal. So it wouldn't surprise me if Malik went top 5, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Seahawks took him at number 9 if he fell there. So the pros of Malik Willis, like I said, he's a physically gifted guy. He did run a tempo-oriented offense in college, which is appealing. It's something that can tire a defense out and make them easier to read. Extends plays really well. He's got great vision as a runner on top of his great speed. He's got the big arm. He can make the throws. There's no concern about his deep ball. He can get the ball down the field. He keeps his eyes up even when he's running. He's relatively accurate. He's got a nice release. A lot to like here. However, my hang-up with Malik Willis would just be the fact that he is developmental. So if you spend the number 9 pick on Malik Willis and you bring him in, you might be looking at a guy who does not play his first year very much at all. You might be looking at the Trey Lance. You might be looking at a Trey Lance type scenario where you just sit him down unless you have to put him out there. And unlike Trey Lance, Malik Willis is not super young. He was in college football for 4 years. He just spent 2 years on the bench at, what was it? It might have been LSU. I can't even remember now, but he spent 2 years on the bench for a bigger school and then transferred to Liberty. So you are looking at a guy who may not really see the field until he's relatively old. And spending a top 10 pick on a player who you're not planning on using very much in the first year, maybe even the first 2 years, honestly, I don't like that. Fundamentally, I'm not a fan of that because not only does it waste his rookie deal, it also makes it harder to figure out if your front office is doing the right stuff because you're not going to get to see Willis until a future year. Like I said, the turnovers are a little bit of a concern. He did double the interceptions he had from 2020 to 2021. I don't know if he's a great fit for this team because he's an RPO guy, at least in part. He ran a lot of RPO at Liberty, and I don't know if we have RPO in this playbook. I don't know if that's a Waldron thing. We didn't really run it with Wilson last year, to my knowledge. I didn't see a whole lot of it. And speaking of Wilson, by the way, Malik Willis in many ways does mirror a young, less polished Russell Wilson, a little bit faster, but you will see some of the similar stuff from him in terms of forsaking the easy completion. He will try to go make a big play when really he should just be trying to take the easy check down. He did play lesser competition, although he did have lesser teammates, so it's not like he was playing on a stacked team. I think his accuracy is good, but it's not great. I think that his mediocre to lackluster completion percentage could easily be blamed on his teammates somewhat, but some of it is his accuracy is not great. And also his size. He's not small, but he's not big. He doesn't have prototypical size at all. And overall, I would be intrigued if we spent the number 9 pick on him because I'm now pretty much convinced that's what it would take to get him. But I would also have some real reservations about that. I would be very concerned that we're spending the number 9 overall pick on a project who could definitely go either way. So mixed thoughts on Malik Willis, but freakish talent for sure. All right, now we go on to the next guy. This is Kenny Pickett. He was a guy who kind of exploded onto the scene in 2021. Pittsburgh Panthers quarterback, 6'3", so he's got close to prototypical size, 217 pounds. I'll get this out of the way right now. My main hang-up with him would be his 8.5-inch size hands. He has baby hands. He has Dave Craig hands. He has Alex Smith hands. Dude fumbles. And I don't like that because there's nothing you can do to fix that. There's nothing you can do to undo that. You can't make your hands bigger. His 40 time at the combine was 4.73, which is okay. He's not a huge threat with his legs, but he is a little bit of one with his legs, so his 40 time does matter somewhat. And if you take a look at his play over his 4-year college career, The first 3 years, he was okay. Nothing special at all. Completion percentage in the high 50s to low 60s. Yards per attempt was in the 6.5 to 7.5 range, very mediocre. Touchdowns, 12 to 13 a season. Would turn it over at, a higher than 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. Ran for some yards, had over 100 rushing yards in 2019-2020, over 200 in 2018. Not a huge playmaker there, but he did okay. And then 2021, the dude blows up. Threw for over 4,300 yards, upped his completion percentage to 67. Yards per attempt skyrocketed to 8.7, very strong. 42 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Also upped his running ability, averaged 2.5 yards a carry, had 5 touchdowns, 233 yards overall. So he broke out in a big way, and because of that, he is now a almost consensus first-round guy. The only big board that I looked at that didn't have him as a first-round guy was PFF. They had him in the middle of the second. Everyone else says bottom half of the first, except for Walter Football. They actually think he's going to go in the top half of the first. He's got good size. He's got a lot of experience. He still has his mobility. It's not like the Malik Willis mobility, but he does have mobility, especially in the pocket, moves well. He's very accurate, especially this last year. He's a little bit of a finished product in the sense that he should be ready to start day one. Leadership abilities are good. He's got the big arm. I'm not worried about him being able to make deep throws down the field or throws in bad weather. He improvises very well. Seems like a smart player as well. Seems like he knows how to make the smart play. And he wasn't in an offense that made everything super easy for him. He wasn't in an offense that made him make tough throws, and he consistently made them. So that's big. The issues that I have with Kenny Pickett, first of all, would just be he's got small hands. I don't like that in a quarterback. It's something that always puts my radar up. He's already going to be 24 by the time he actually gets a chance to play, so he's already a little old, which it's not a deal breaker, but it's not great. His overall, you do have to wonder where 2021 came from after 3 years of being very mediocre for Pittsburgh, just kind of bobbing around. Nobody would really be talking about Kenny Pickett that much if it wasn't for what he did in 2021, so you have to wonder where that came from. To me, he looks like he's going to do very well in a spread offense, and I don't really know how close to a spread offense we're going to be running in Seattle, so I don't know about the fit. His accuracy is good, but there are occasional issues there. He does occasionally panic in the pocket a little bit, and his release is just okay. It's got a little bit of a hitch in it. It's a little bit of a looping release. He doesn't get the ball out super fast. So there are some issues here, but what I'll say is this. Kenny Pickett, if you get him, he will probably start day one. He will probably be your week one starter unless something catastrophic happens. So you don't have to worry about shelving him for a year like you might with Malik Willis. It seems like he's very good above the shoulders. It seems like he knows how to run a good offense. Even though he ran the spread in college, I do think he can make tough throws through too. Everything doesn't have to be manufactured for Kenny Pickett. So that part is nice. There's a lot to like here, but I'm not super interested in spending a first-round pick on a guy like Kenny Pickett. It definitely feels like he's a little bit of a product of the fact that this draft class is not good. Like Malik Willis, I think that if you put Kenny Pickett in last year's draft, he might go second round, easy. He might go third round. I don't know, because the QB class last year was stacked. Kenny Pickett, to me, doesn't hold a candle to those guys, those 5 guys who went in the first round last year. Nevertheless, if you wanted to get Kenny Pickett, you would probably be looking at a trade back into the late first, or maybe a trade up from the early second. But you're probably looking at a first round pick one way or the other. I'm not enthusiastic about that. And I admit most of it is because of his small hands, but that's a big deal to me. I didn't live through Dave Craig because I wasn't alive, but I know people who did live through Dave Craig. I'm not enthusiastic about living through another Dave Craig, a guy who's great, a guy who puts up numbers, a guy who wins games, but ultimately puts the ball on the ground too much, because of his hand size. So Kenny Pickett, not really high on my list, but he's definitely on the list. There's a lot to like, not knocking him too much. Okay, next guy is going to be Matt Corral, and this is a guy who has heavily been linked to the Seahawks in recent times because there's reason to believe that he is going to fit well in this Waldron offense. Played for Ole Miss for a few years. Smaller guy, 6'1", 205 pounds. He's got a kind of slight frame, slight of build. He's got the big hands, 9.7 inches. Did not run the 40 at the combine, but last we checked it was 4.8, so he's not fast, but not necessarily slow. And 2019 was his first year getting real action. He didn't play a ton, didn't do a ton. 1,300 passing yards, average completion percentage, decent yards per attempt, not really putting himself on display here. And then in 2020, he kind of exploded onto the scene. 3,300 yards, 71% completion, averaged over 10 yards an attempt. Really good. 29 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. The 14 interceptions is ugly, but he also unveiled running ability. And he's not fast, but he's smart with his legs. He has good vision. He runs, sometimes he can even run with a little bit of power, which you wouldn't expect from a guy of his size. But he's a good red zone threat with his legs. And 2021, he continued on. He fixed some of his turnover issues. Again, he had over 3,300 yards. Completion percentage dropped a little to 68, but still really good. Yards per attempt dropped to 8.7, still pretty good. 5 interceptions in 2021 compared to 14 in 2020, really good. Also became, continued to be a relatively prolific rusher, 600 yards, 11 touchdowns. You look at the big boards, and this is a guy who may sneak into the first round, like the back end of the first round, but might slip into the early second. That's my current anticipation. As you can see, some of this stuff's all over the place. Tankathon and CBS think he's going to be a late first rounder. Sports Illustrated, PFF, TDN, they see him as a second rounder. ESPN sees him as an early second. So you're probably looking at like a late first to early second guy. He's a pretty good athlete, despite the fact that he doesn't run a 40 time. He is a pass first guy. He isn't somebody who's just going to always look to run, despite the fact that he has the ability to run. His turnover problems got fixed from 2020 to 2021. He seems very smart. He's got great accuracy and zip in the short to intermediate game. When I watched his tape, a lot of his throws are short, quick, over-the-middle stuff. Very good over the middle, which is something we haven't had here for the last 10 years. He's got a great release. He gets the ball out quickly. He might have the best release in college football. His mechanics are sound. This is a guy who might be able to start day one if you got him. However, there are some real issues with Matt Corral, and it's hard for me to swallow spending a first-round pick on him. His arm strength is mediocre at best. You watch his tape, you don't see a lot of long completions down the field. You don't see a lot of shot plays. And the ones that you do, the ball kind of hangs on him. It's not great. He definitely has some issues with getting the ball down the field, has some issues getting the ball into tight windows. His size is going to create some injury concerns for him. He's relatively small, and he has been injured before. He's gotten hurt before and missed time. And given the fact that he does like to use his legs and he's not fast, you do have to consider the possibility that he's going to miss time in his career just because of that. I think that he would be a good fit for the Waldron offense because he knows how to get the ball out fast, and he is very good in the short and intermediate game. If you looked at what Ole Miss was doing on offense with Corral, you would definitely see a lot of stuff that would get you excited for the possibility of him working in a Sean McVay, Shane Waldron type offense. But he did run a lot of RPO, which I don't know if that's really what we're going to be doing here. He did have a history of turnovers in 2020. So you do have to wonder if maybe 2021, the 5 interception year, was an aberration. That's obviously a concern. And he may very well be dependent on the system. I don't look at Matt Corral and see a guy who can lift his team up. I don't look at Matt Corral and I don't see a guy who's going to be able to lift your team over the top. I see a guy who's going to excel if you put great stuff around him. So, to me, Matt Corral's aight. He's aight, but I'm not really into a top 40, top 50 pick on him. And that's probably what it's going to take at this point. Okay, let's move on to prospect number 4 here, Desmond Ridder. This guy, there's a lot there. I like a lot of stuff about Desmond Ridder. He's maybe the most prototypical QB in this draft. Desmond Ridder, Cincinnati Bearcat. A lot of good Cincinnati Bearcat players in this draft. He's got prototypical size, 6'4", 215 pounds, got big hands, ran a 4.52 40, one of the best 40 times for a quarterback in the draft. Dude can move, dude has speed, dude has 4 years of starting experience for the Bearcats. All the seasons he had were at least pretty decent, but 2021 was clearly his best year as a passer. 3,300 yards, 65% completion, 8.6 yards per attempt, 30 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and he didn't run as well as he did in previous years, but he did show the ability to do that in some previous years. You can see 650 yards, 600 yards, 12 rushing touchdowns one year. So really good passer and runner. And as you can see from the big board ranks, he is projected to be a late first round to an early second round by most places. So I think that if you want Desmond Ridder, the most likely scenario is he's going to be a late first rounder to early second rounder. So you would either be looking at a small trade up in the second round or a big trade down from number 9. The stuff to like about Desmond Ridder is really obvious. He's got great versatility. He's big, but he's fast. He can make a lot of the throws, but he can run a real offense. A lot of stuff to like. He's experienced. His progression as a player over his career has been pretty solid. He's got a nice arm. It's not an amazing arm, but it's a good arm. He can make throws down the field. A lot of deep stuff. A lot of shot plays. Got good mobility. He's got great leadership. He was the leader of that Bearcats offense for 4 years. He's good in the pocket, pretty good in the pocket. He's got a high football IQ. He knows how to put touch on his throws. And unlike Matt Corral, who runs well without speed, Desmond Ridder actually has pretty close to top-end speed for a quarterback. So a lot of exciting stuff from Desmond Ridder. Now, what you might be concerned about would be he's occasionally aggressive with his decision-making, which does lead to some turnover-worthy plays. That has to raise a little bit of a red flag there because you know we have a head coach who doesn't like the turnovers very much. His accuracy is good, but it does need some work. As you can see, his best year from an accuracy standpoint, 66%. That's good, but it could be better. And for a pro-level offense, it's probably going to need to be better. I don't know if Ridder is going to be great out of the box. He is a little bit of a project despite the fact that he has a ton of experience. I do think there are some things with him mechanically that you will need to work out. You will probably need to give him a great supporting cast to succeed early on. And while he does have some nice arm strength, it's not great. He's got a nice arm. He can put some good zip on the ball. He can get the ball down the field. But when you compare him to the arm strength of some other quarterbacks out there, it is a little bit lacking. Now, Desmond Ridder, if you could get him in the early second or late first, I would be pretty cool with that. I like that. I wouldn't have an issue with that. I think he's probably worth a pick in that area. If you could build a great running game around him, which is obviously what we're going to be trying to do this offseason regardless, I think he would have a chance. And I think he might even have a chance year 1. So, to me, Desmond Ridder is somebody that I would be relatively excited to get as long as you didn't have to take him in the first half of the first round. So I'm going to put Ridder near the top of my list for quarterbacks that you could take in the top 100, but I wouldn't put him at the top. We're going to get to that in a second here. But Ridder, the more I look into him, the more I think this could actually work. So just know that if the Seahawks do decide to make Desmond Ridder their guy, as long as they don't use a top 15, 16 pick on him, I'm happy. And even if we did have to use a top 16 pick, I would be like, okay, let's see what's up. Okay, 2 more guys, and then we're done. First guy is Sam Howell. Not really sure what to make of this dude totally. I'm pretty, I don't know. I have very mixed feelings about this. North Carolina, Tar Heel. Size is okay, but not great. He's 6'1", 220 pounds almost, so he's kind of big. Hands are mediocrely sized. It's not terrible, but it's not good. Last time he ran a 40, it was plus 5 seconds, which is not good, but he didn't run at the combine, so we don't know what it is now. The production for Sam Howell at North Carolina was quite good. He had 3 starting years of experience, and all 3 of them were very credible. First year as a starter at North Carolina, he had 3,600 yards and 38 touchdowns. Only 7 interceptions, too. Not a lot of turnovers. Not much of a running threat this year. 2020, he came back, increased his completion percentage massively to 68, averaged over 10 yards per, 30 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Little bit more of a running threat. But 2021 is when he became a true dual threat quarterback. 3,000 yards passing, completion percentage took a dive, but he was still good as a passer, and he became a very prolific running threat, ran for over 800 yards and 11 touchdowns. So Sam Howell became a true dual threat, and because of that, a couple places like PFF think he's actually going to be a first-round pick. Most places say second round, so I think Sam Howell is like a mid-second round guy. Could definitely see the Seahawks taking him at number, let's call it number 41 overall. Maybe a small trade down. Now, the stuff to like about Howell is he's accurate. I watched some of the stuff that he did at North Carolina. He's got good accuracy. He's got a good arm. He can make all the throws. He developed a great running ability despite not having great speed in 2021. He's got good mechanics. He can put some touch on the ball. He knows how to extend a play. So when he takes off to run, he's still looking to pass. He knows how to read a defense well. He seems pretty cerebral in that regard. So there is some stuff to like with Sam Howell, absolutely. However, even though he has a lot of experience and good experience in college, I still view him as a project. He had a lot of easy throws that he made at North Carolina that he's not necessarily going to have in the NFL. His pocket presence is average. Sometimes he runs into sacks. Sometimes he doesn't feel the pressure right. He is slow, which has to be a bit of a concern in the NFL, even though he is a good runner. It seems to me that he does it more with vision than speed. His deep ball is okay, but it's not great. His release has a hitch in it that I don't like. And at the end of the day, I see him as another guy kind of like Corral. He's going to need a great team around him. He's never going to be the guy to lift the team. So that's Sam Howell to me. Kind of a weird one for me, but let's go move forward to the guy that I actually really like in this draft. And this is probably my favorite solution at quarterback for this team right now. It is Carson Strong of Nevada. If you could get Carson Strong out of this draft, I'm feeling really good about the direction of this team and the decisions they're making. So Carson Strong has prototypical size. He's 6'4", 215 pounds. His hand size is okay, 9.1 inches. It could be bigger, but I don't think it's a problem at that size. His 40 time, he didn't run at the combine because of an injury, but last time he ran the 40, it was 4.81, which is actually not bad given the fact that the concern a lot of people have about him is that he's slow and immobile. We'll talk about that in a second here. But if you look at his numbers over his 3-year career at Nevada, he improved with every year. That first year, he was very, very forgettable. 2020, he upped his completion percentage to 70, his yards per attempt to 8, and had 27 touchdowns to 4 picks. Really, really good improvement. And then 2021, he threw for over 4,100 yards, still had a great completion percentage, still had a great touchdown to interception ratio. There's a lot to be enthusiastic about with those numbers. That's very impressive to me. And the only reason why Carson Strong is not a first-round pick in this draft is because of the injury. If he was healthy, if there was no injury concern, I think he would be a top 10 pick. Slam dunk. Forget about it. As you can see, as of right now, pretty much every big board has him going in the 3rd round. A couple of them say 2nd, like Tankathon has him in the late 2nd. PFF has him in the very early 3rd. But I think that you are going to get this guy in the 3rd round, and that excites me. He's a prototypical old-school pocket passer. He's a great pocket passer. He's got a big arm. His mechanics are sound. He's very polished. He's great pre-snap. He might be the best pre-snap quarterback in this draft. When he gets a clean pocket, he's extremely accurate. His completion percentage speaks for itself. Very smart. He's got a nice deep ball. I saw him make a lot of good deep throws. Not a turnover risk. And Despite the fact that he has the reputation of being immobile, a lot of that has to stem with the fact that he was playing on a less than 100% knee that is now basically 100%. So I think he can move in the pocket and even take off and run for a couple yards every now and then if need be. Now, there are obvious cons with Carson Strong. He's not a threat to run the ball at all. He had negative rushing yards every year of his college career. The injury history is a concern. Once you pressure Carson Strong, he's not great. Not at all. He is going to need a great offensive line. When you put him under duress, he can become inaccurate. He's also mostly a shotgun guy. I have a feeling this offense may not love that. But if you could get Carson Strong in the third, I'm excited. So those are the 6 quarterbacks right now. So let me know what you guys think about these guys. This ended up being a really long video, but hey, it's quarterback talk. This is big. And I think there's a very high chance we end up with one of these 6 guys. So my take is try to get Carson Strong in the 3rd round. I'm not saying he's going to be the best quarterback in this class, but I do think that he has a chance to be really good until and if the injuries catch up to him. But for those first 4 years, I think you're getting a polished, ready-to-go quarterback. I was actually surprised when I was looking at some of the stuff about him. I thought he was going to be a bit of a project. But after looking at him, I actually think he could be a day 1 starter, health permitting. So Carson Strong in the 3rd is my guy. I would be cool with Desmond Ridder. Malik Willis, I'm conflicted on, but I would be okay with it. And Pickett, Corral, and Howell. I'm not really feeling that one. I'm just not there. I just have too many reservations about those 3 guys. But if you could get Carson Strong in the 3rd and use your first 3 picks to build up the team around Carson Strong, I feel like you could make some stuff happen. Those are my quick and dirty scouting reports. Tomorrow we're going to take a look at some sleeper quarterbacks, but let me know what you think about this crop. It's not a good crop of quarterbacks at all, I don't think. The only thing I can say is that Carson Strong would be a blue chipper if not for the knee surgery that he had. So that's an opportunity to steal a guy who has no business in the 3rd round. And I know the NFL's moving away from pure pocket passers, but I mean, Tom Brady's won some Super Bowls lately. Matt Ryan made it to a Super Bowl. Nick Foles won a Super Bowl. Like, it's happening. We're seeing those guys have more success than you might think. Matt Stafford, too, by the way. All right. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. See you guys later today. Peace out. Go Hawks. And that's what I got.